you're gonna have to, are you muted, Gary?
Yes, I am.
There
No,
you
I'm
are.
not.
Okay, now we can hear you and we can see you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I'm calling you from COVID land here. It was a kind of a shock this morning to take that test and to find out that had little pink lines on it. So anyway, I'm feeling okay. Not great, but I'm feeling okay. And wish I was there. No, you don't wish I was there. Yeah, I wish I was there. So I had two things going on, and it's a little awkward to do it this way, looking at the computer rather than being out there and feeling your energy and your love and appreciation, which we always feel from you guys. And I was wondering what subjects to talk about. Well, two things came up this week. Lots of times we get calls and emails and whatever from people and talking about their problems, or sometimes bad times and good times for them. And we try to do our best to address them in person and on the phone, back and forth with emails. But it kind of hard to me this week. Someone was concerned that we know, but anonymous, of course, that they're concerned about death and dying, concerned about a diagnosis, and they're concerned about what is it? What if I die? What is it like to die? Where will I go, up or down, or all around, what have you? And realize, wow, there's so much fear about dying. And I think of, along with myself, that Don Shell and Jerry Bolin have had near-death experiences where they have left their physical body and wandered a bit, and wandered and wondered. And I had a similar situation. I told this story a couple of years ago, but I'm going to tell you the short version of this today. I was with some dear friends, my best buddies in Las Cruces. I was a minister, unity minister in Las Cruces, Mexico. And we were going to go to a healing herbs seminar because I'm all about health and healing, although I don't sound like it right now, do I? A seminar in Tucson. And we were, James and Regis and myself. James was driving, I was on the passenger, and Regis was in the back seat. And along the way, we came back to this semi-wheeler, semi-truck, 18-wheeler, I'm trying to say. And he slowed down, and James, the driver, pulled out. He said, "What's this guy slowing down for?" And he pulled out really quick. And there was a lady who the police were chasing. She was doing 75 miles an hour. There were two state troopers behind her, soon to be more. They were following her and trying to get her to stop. And when James pulled out to pass this truck, she met us head on. And we were going probably about 70 miles an hour as well. Well, the crux of it was it killed Regis and James. And it really beat me up a lot. I had a lot of stuff going on health-wise in that few seconds. I was really crushed up. And so they took me to Tucson. They air flighted me out to Tucson. I was in intensive care. So going back to the accident, it was just a split second that I saw this car oncoming, and James screamed, and I looked up, and bang. And it was one of those noises that it was impossible to get any louder. It was just a horrendous crash, if you can imagine. And I smelled gasoline, and I was soaked in battery acid, and just a horrible head-on collision. And I found myself out of my body. Now, this wasn't the first time. I had an experience when I was a kid and had my tonsils out, and I remember telling him, my folks, what happened. I said I was on a table and I was floating up in the air and looking down at the doctor, and nobody believed me, and I was trying to explain it to them. I didn't understand it myself, of course. But when this accident happened, I realized, oh my God, here I am, and I was floating out of my body. And I wore glasses to see distance at the time. And the first thing I realized was, my gosh, I can see perfectly. And it was just perfectly in colors and just background music that was indescribable. And I realized I'm out of my body. And the first thing I did, I went into fear because I thought, I don't want to leave my children. I had a son and a daughter. And I said, I don't want to leave my children. And the block of message that I got was, you know, this is the time, it's not your time to go, but you want to go, what do you want to do about your children? And I said, no, I don't want to. And I was pulled back into my body, and at that time I felt horrendous pain. I was pretty crushed up. And I felt immense pain, and the highway patrol was already there because they had been following this lady when she crashed. Killed again my two buddies, banged me up, and she got a broken wrist out of it, the drunk driver. And so I don't have much sympathy for drunk drivers, needless to say. But anyway, the cops were coming up, and highway patrol, and I went up to them and realized that they didn't see me. I was right in front of them, and I was waving my hands out, and I was talking to them, hey, can you see me? And I realized, no, they can't. Well, I thought, I've got to document this for myself. And so I looked at their badges, looked at their name tags, and I also looked at the numbers on top of the cars. On top of the police cars, they have numbers 1, 2, 3, or 07, or whatever have you. And I thought, I'm going to remember these. And I was air fighter to Tucson, and when I woke up in the ER, I was trying to tell them, man, this is incredible, and they put me out. So about 3 days later, these same highway patrolmen in plain clothes came into my room, and they said they were there to get my statement about the accident. And I said, you know, I know you guys. What do you mean? I said, I can tell you your names, and I don't remember them now, but I rattled off their names one at a time. And I said, now, I want to tell you something. I was floating out of my body. I could see them roll in their eyes. But then I said, and I can tell you the numbers on top of your cars. And I got them right. And they were really, really amazed. And I'll cut that. I could go on a long time about what happened after that. But I want to tell the person that we talked to this week that you don't have to be afraid to die. And I know that you don't lose consciousness, not even for a second. In fact, you're more conscious than ever when you leave your body. People who have near-death experience, the NDEs, come back in their body, and whether they were having an operation or what they were going on, they would try to explain this to their doctor, and the doctor blamed it on, oh, it's a hallucination, or your brain was rattled, and you thought this and thought that. And they knew better, the people that were trying to explain what happened, and I, for one, can tell you that's very, very, very true. So there was a little video that Dr. Larry Dawsey, he wrote this book for healing words. Natalie, can you get that video going here? And healing words. He wrote this book, and he's all about prayer. He's a medical doctor, and he talks about his out-of-body experiences that he and others had had. So if you can just put that on. A little discombobulated because of the circumstances this morning, but I know you're there with us. So this is Dr. Larry Dawsey. He's spoken at Unity Village. He's very much into unity, science of mind.
Just
near-death experiences are some of the most vivid examples of how our minds operate outside of our brain and body. The essence of a near-death experience is that you understand things, you have certain experiences that cannot be explained by a sick and dying brain. And these experiences are utterly vivid. They make a tremendous difference in how people orient their lives after they come back from these experiences. And so they're transformative. I don't think you can explain these incredible, life-changing, transformative experiences by saying, well, these are just the products of hallucinations and fantasy from a brain that really isn't working well. You can't get these highly refined experiences from a sick and dying brain. And in spite of this, materialists continue to harp on the fact that people are just making this stuff up. There's no evidence for that. And fortunately, people who have looked at near-death experiences under the most exacting situations come back saying something important is going on here. This is not consciousness operating at a very low level. This is consciousness operating at a very high, sophisticated level. There are several aspects of the near-death experience that point to the fact that our mind operates outside of our brain and our physical senses. One is the live review. These happen extremely rapidly, and they seem to defy the sense of flowing time, which we have in our ordinary daily experience. Also, people have vivid experiences of meeting people who have died before. What is fascinating about these kinds of experiences is that in a lot of instances, people who are at the bedside attending the individual who is dying also have experiences of seeing these individuals from the other side as vivid as you can imagine. So this group experience of the near-death experiences is utterly important in going beyond this idea that that person who is sick in bed and who is dying is just having some sort of hallucination. And also, as a physician, I'm interested in people who come back from the near-death experiences with skills that they didn't have before they had the experience. In my book, One Mind, I review some of the experiences of individuals who had no interest or skills in healing, who, after they recover, had these remarkable abilities to understand illness, to diagnose illness, and to treat illness. Where did this come from? This is not the sort of thing that you can predict as a result of some sort of quirky biochemical neurological abnormality of a sick and dying brain. If you lump all of these observations together, I think you have to say, this demands our attention, because this defies what we're taught in physiology and biology classes and medical schools, because it suggests a way of knowing and an accessing of information that is utterly majestic, that we would just simply lump all of this sort of data and dismiss it as just hallucinations strikes me as really rather crazy. One of the commonest results from a near-death experience is that people experience the fear of death as something that just goes away, it evaporates. It's not present when they return to their normal existence. One reason they do this is because of the assurances that they have meeting people on the other side who would tell them that there's nothing to fear. I even have a friend who has had a near-death experience, which she came back laughing because she thought it was so silly that she was horrified of death before she had this experience. Also, people have this experience of time as something that doesn't escape. It's not running away. It's not going anywhere. So they experience a sense of time as stillness. So there's nothing to be afraid of. And plus, there's the experience of unity with everything that is. It's a euphoric feeling. People have a joyful experience during these moments. And this, for many people, is the most meaningful experience that they can imagine or have ever had in this life. And so you put all of these factors together, and people come back in a way in which they are utterly transformed from fear of death. Many people look forward to it, saying that I didn't want to come back here in the first place. I wanted to stay over there because the contrast is so great. So the lack of fear, the dissipation of fear, the evaporation of this terror is something that near-death experiences are a therapy for. I happen to believe, in my experience as a physician, that the fear of death and total annihilation with physical death has caused more suffering in the history of the human race than all the physical diseases combined. And what we know from these testimonies of 15 million Americans now who have had a near-death experience, that the near-death experience is a therapy. It's an antidote for this horrible fear and terror of physical death. And so I'm not one to recommend near-death experiences. They're not always reversible. But the message is clear. The fear of death is overdone by people who have come as close to dying as we can possibly imagine. And this is one of the human experiences that really deserve to be taken seriously. I think it's important that healthcare professionals open up to this experience and never denigrate it or criticize people for talking about these experiences. You know, this was something that one could hardly talk about before the 1970s when Dr. Raymond Moody wrote his famous book, which opened up this whole world. You know, there was an entire stigma associated with talking about precognition, seeing other beings and being met by a transcendent being or going through a tunnel toward the light. This was an effective way of getting yourself placed on antipsychotic medication, or worse. Healthcare professionals have every reason to promote and encourage people toward talking about these things. First of all, it's just therapeutic. It helps people reintegrate into life. I've known people who have been so criticized by their doctor that they have been banished from the doctor's practice because they talked about these experiences. I've known many people who have had their marriages fall apart because their spouses couldn't handle this kind of talk. We need to loosen up as a culture and acknowledge up front that consciousness can do things when the brain is sick that we can't experience in ordinary life. It's unfortunate that people have to nearly die to get to this place, and the good news is that they don't. Because the more we're able to talk about this sort of thing and open up, the more likely it is for people to experience these states of consciousness without nearly dying. That's where we need to get to in our culture. And doctors, healthcare professionals, nurses can effectively open this door and say, it's okay to talk about this sort of thing. This is real. These people are not making this up. So if doctors want to say, trust me, I'm a doctor, I know about these things, it's okay for you to talk like this, I think that's a great thing to do.
So I hope you got something profound out of that. experience and people to talk about a near-death experience, that they've left their body and they've experienced that. I think I've gotten more eye rolls. I am very careful who I talk to about it, because it pushes people away sometimes, because they've been told that there's either a heaven and a hell, and you go either up or down or what have you. And unity, we don't believe in a devil or Satan or hell. If we do, it's the ego. The ego is the deceiver. And we by all means believe that God is love and only love, and we believe in the teachings of Jesus. Or we don't take seriously every word in the Bible because of the tremendous amount of contradictions and editing that's gone through over the centuries. It's got a lot of good stuff in it, but we're not Bible thumping people, as you say. Again, we appreciate and teach what Jesus taught: unconditional love and forgiveness, etc., etc., etc. So there was because my buddy Dave always wants to hear his son be funny here, so Father Murphy walks into a pub and says to the first man he meets, "You want to go to heaven?" The man said, "I do, Father." The priest said, "All right, stand over there against the wall." Then the priest asked the second man, "Do you want to go to heaven?" "Certainly, Father," was the man's reply. "Then stand over there against the wall," said the priest. Then Father Murphy walked up to O'Toole and said, "You want to go to heaven?" O'Toole said, No, I don't want to go to heaven, Father." And the priest said, "I don't believe you. You mean to tell me that when you die, you don't want to go to heaven?" O'Toole said, "Oh, when I die, yeah, I thought you were getting a group together to go right now." So I've done something funny. So, we get asked a lot about prayer. Do we believe in prayer? And absolutely, we in Unity don't believe that there's a angry, beseeching God out there that you have to be careful of, that sends you to hell if you get it wrong and all that. We're not about that at all. What we believe, that we have the power of God within us. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. And so we believe in meditation and prayer, but we're do affirmative prayer. It's not, "Oh, dear God, help me, I'm a no good sinner," and all this stuff like that. That's as far as we're concerned, just inappropriate. If that's the way people want to believe, that's their business. But we believe in you have the power, the God-given power, to bring about that which you want. And so when Jesus said pray, and pray believing that what you asked for is already yours, well, there's the key. By the power of your imagination, by the power that you have in visualizing, by the power you have in asking for what you want, and knowing that there's a higher power of you, that when you're tuned into it, that it will bring about your good, whether it's prosperity, and the idea of financing, or perfect health, or perfect relationship, or improved relationship, or anything along those lines. We have the power to bring it about by our thoughts, by our words, and by our actions, working with the feeling from the heart and the intellect from the brain, putting them together to bring about whatever we want. We are co-creators with God. Now there is one other video that I know this person that I'm thinking about is talking about doctors and hospitals, and what if I would die on the operating table, and what if I had a heart attack, and what if I had this? And so I found this other short video that might bring comfort to this person and you.
It gives you the chills.
A patient on the brink of death.
He had no heart rate. He had no blood pressure. He had no pulse. I mean, think about that.
Like something scripted in Hollywood, says intensive care unit nurse Emily Bishop.
He was down for close to 45 minutes.
During which time, He claims he traveled beyond this world and back.
Well, he was telling me that he loved me and that he'd seen the light and that he had seen my mom and my dad. And I lost it at that point in time because I just lost my mom.
The week after burying his mother-in-law, Brian Miller returned to work, delivering metal here in Streetsboro.
I was feeling fine. And then when I undid the tarp and pulled the tarp off, I started getting the tightness.
Probably the cold air or asthma, he thought, until the intense pain started.
I'm a truck driver, and I think I'm having a heart attack.
Brian was having a massive heart attack, his main artery entirely blocked, known as the Widowmaker.
He was in obvious distress when we found him.
Streetsboro firefighters and paramedics put the hospital on alert.
Got to be real aggressive with our protocols and got to the hospital as soon as we could. Can be life or death.
Dr. William Wolf rushed Brian into surgery here at University Hospital's Ahuja Medical Center.
We want to open up the vessel as soon as possible.
Here's the blockage being cleared and blood flow restored.
Man, the pain just started slowly going down.
They told him that he did good by getting here as soon as he did, coming quick.
Not only did Brian survive the heart attack and emergency surgery, he was already up and talking. He was doing fine until he suddenly wasn't.
I saw it come across the screen. I ran in there.
Brian was experiencing a fatal arrhythmia called VFib, ventricular fibrillation.
Basically, his heart rate goes like this. And it's just this like scribble. And his heart is just kind of like quivering in there. It's not able to pump, it's not doing anything.
Emily called Code Blue.
CPR, CPR, CPR. Strong, hard, fast CPR.
A half a dozen nurses and doctors also responded.
Pushing a whole bunch of medications to basically restart his heart.
But at just 41, the husband and father of 3 was slipping away.
The only thing I remember is I started seeing the light and started walking towards the light.
While the ICU team tried to revive Brian, he claims he was walking along a heavenly path lined with flowers, then stopped by a familiar face.
She was the most beautiful thing when I seen her. It was like the first day I met her, and looked so happy.
His mother-in-law, Kay, who had just passed away.
She grabbed a hold of my arm and she told me, it's not your time. You don't need to be here. We need to take you back. You got things to go home and do.
And after what felt like 15 minutes,
her husband Jack was back there waving at me, giving me a smile, and she just telling me to go home and walked me back.
but at the hospital, time was running out, or so everyone thought.
We shocked him 4 times. And on the 4th time, it still didn't work. And then, out of nowhere, he got his pulse back.
A normal heartbeat after nearly 45 minutes.
It's pretty awesome to see.
Even more incredible was Brian's condition.
So if you think about that, his brain had no oxygen for 45 minutes. So the fact that he is up, walking, talking, laughing, everything, I mean, that's amazing.
As is Brian's memory of the white light.
And I just totally broke down. And I went and sat down because I totally lost it when he told me that.
But Brian says there's no reason to feel sad. The experience has changed his entire outlook on life and death.
There is an afterlife, and people need to believe in it big time.
He says he's eternally grateful to the medical staff and his mother-in-law for this second chance.
I need to be here a lot more longer. I got 3 wonderful daughters and a wife.
And in the end, he says, that's all that really matters.
Love, very much love.
In Beechwood, Suzanne Stratford, Fox 8 News.
Wow, that touches me every time I look at that. So the next thing, how are we doing on time, Natalie? I feel a little bit peakish right now too, but I'll invite you to, Don handed out some books, this Never Alone book, and the other topic was prayer. I didn't know how much time I would have today, but I think this is important. This is your book to keep. if you'll turn to page 8. James Dillard Freeman was Unity's poet laureate. He was a teacher when I was in ministerial school in the 80s. He was a profound teacher. And one thing I remember about him, his wife had Alzheimer's. And he would bring her everywhere he went. And he said that someone once told him that they were too embarrassed to bring their spouse along because she didn't want people to see him in the process of Alzheimer's and deteriorating and all that stuff like that. And Jim Freeman said, no, her prayer is to stay with me, and she's holding me to that, and I'm not going to be without her. If you knew the man, you would appreciate that very much from him. So I guess the only thing to do is we could read this together, then I'll close. It's just 5 minutes here. So page 8, Prayer is Life by James Dillard Freeman. I have made many kinds of prayer, almost wordless prayers of spiritual anguish and formal prayers learned by rote. I have prayed upon waking in the morning, in the evening as I have fallen asleep, and at special times I have set aside. I have joined in prayer with others, said grace at meals, recited psalms in church. Waking at night, I have prayed alone. In my times of deepest need, I have prayed, and I have prayed when I had no need except to feel at one with God, though this may be the deepest need of all. Prayer is survival power. Though the night may come down dark around us, and the faith with which we face the night seems small, perhaps no faith at all, if we pray, always some spark leaps up through the tinder of our hearts, a little light to show us our way. Prayer is life. There are many ways to pray, and there are many ways to God. The way of the bird is not the way of the fish. The way of the babe is not the way of the man. The way of the beginner is not the way of the master. Yet there is no atom of creation that does not have access to God. Every soul finds its way to God at the level of its own experience. For some, prayer is thought, and for some, it is feelings too articulate for thoughts to express. Communion with nature may be the prayer, or the enjoyment of art and poetry and music. An act of kindness may be a prayer, a smile, a friendly hand. Work is often a prayer, for work is an affirmation of creative power. Prayer is a kind of prayer. Praise is a kind of prayer, so is zeal. There is the prayer that is the distillation of a moment, passionate and intense, and the prayer that is the whole life of a person, the living prayer of which one is. There is a prayer that is words, and a prayer that is silence. Sometimes when I pray aloud. To control my thinking, I must often phrase my thoughts in words and speak the words aloud, or even write them down. Yet sometimes when I pray, I do not need to speak any words at all. I merely need to turn my thought to God, and the thought of God floods my mind. I merely need to give myself to God, and God gives to me. Much of prayer is speaking, yet much of prayer is listening. And the speaking we do in prayer is important, but the listening is even more important. For it is as we listen that God speaks, and it is when we are still that God acts. It is in the silence that the word of God is uttered and the work of God is done. Many times when I have prayed for things, I have not gotten what I've prayed for, yet I feel I've never prayed in vain. Perhaps things have not changed as I have wished them to change, but always I have changed. Always some change is wrought in prayer, sometimes in the fabric of things, always in the fabric of self. Then too I have a sense in my life that my life is more than I have power to see or foresee. The highest prayer is not the one that asks for things, but the one that seeks a sense of God and our relation to God, a sense of our abiding in the hands of God and the love of God. Prayer is not for the purpose of changing things, but of changing us. It is not to make the infinite conform to our will, but to help us understand and conform to the will of the infinite. Shall I change the sea by shouting or the wind by wailing? Yet when I was a child, I dug a hole in the sand, and even as I dug, the sea welled into the hole and filled it full. When I pray, I dig down through the sand of self, so that the sea of God may fill me full. This is affirmative prayer, to know in the face of sickness that underneath are the everlasting arms of wholeness, and in the truest part of us, we are inseparable one with life. To be able to hear through the discords of daily living the music of immortal love, to strike its chords from the key of our own being, to be able to look at lack, yet to drink deeply from unseen wells of plenty. It is the ability to see facts and flaws, yet know that they are not reality. For myself, I have not found the meaning and value of prayer to lie so much in the answer to prayer as in the prayer itself. For prayer is a way of life, as well as a way of facing life. It is an end as well as a means. It is a spiritual experience. To those who pray, prayer is life itself. So I want to tell you just a minute about what someone told me. They said that they needed to pray. They were feeling awful, just A to Z, down and out. They were sick, they were broke, they were this, they were that. And they couldn't find the words to pray and didn't know what to pray. And this person said, well, what I did, remember we showed you a picture last week of the higher self, the higher part of us that is actually us, but it's a higher part of this, a more profound God that knows everything, not some big abstract God out there, but your personal Lord of your being. This person said that they took a blanket and wrapped it around him tight and just imagined, they couldn't find the words to pray, but they imagined that their higher self, their inner being, the Christ nature of them was wrapped around them, wrapped the arms. And this person said, as they pulled the blanket closer, they could feel the arms. And they said, I realized I didn't have to speak at all. I just felt it. And I felt myself into wellness. I felt so good. So I'm going to try that pretty soon because I'm losing my voice, and I'm going to get a blanket and curl up. And anyway, blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you for being here. And I love you.
I love you too.